Welcome to episode number 262 of the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for all of you marketing, advertising, public relations, and communications professionals. You can find us by searching for us at using Beyond Social Media Show on Google or your favorite search engine. I presume it's Google. We are recording live on YouTube on March 10, 2019. A lot of things to talk about this week, including more giraffes, Spotify Studio, Easter egg troll, article chatbots, 5-minute Star Wars, vertical videos, live bedtime stories, Apple glasses, Hololens 2, Pharmafluencers, Sealioning, TP controversy, racist self-driving cars, deceptive form fields, and much, much more. As if that weren't enough, we kick it off with the best story of the week, and BL always has that honor. BL, what was the best story of the week?
Well, I know you don't agree because you're a cynic, but April the giraffe is about to give birth at any minute. And this is from a text message from Animal Adventure Park. So I got a giraffe hysteria has begun text last week, letting me know that April's pregnant again and that labor could start. But as of today, it could be at any minute. So April is the 18-foot tall celebrity giraffe who lives at Animal Adventure Park in Harpersville, New York, and she's about to welcome her 5th calf. Officials are saying that on Facebook. This is a major big deal because after millions of people watched her last baby, Takiri, be born, he had to be euthanized only 6 weeks after because he broke his leg and something happened. But anyway, this latest pregnancy is moving along faster than expected, and so the average giraffe is typically pregnant for 15 months. April's gone up to 16 months before giving birth. She now is almost ready, and it'll be live streamed. It'll be on Facebook. It'll be on your phone. It'll be anywhere you want it to be. It'll basically be everywhere. And people were literally glued to their phones and their tubes and, watching this 6-foot tall baby come out of this 18-foot tall giraffe. So I think it's a big deal. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm not. I am kind of done with giraffes. I was done the second time we talked about it. So
Dave, if she has a 6th one, we'll talk about that one too.
Yay. You know what else is pregnant, though? Spotify is pregnant with podcasts since the acquisition of Gimlet Media. I just haven't been using Spotify a lot lately, but checked in, and they are really promoting the podcast now in the Spotify app. And they're promoting, I saw on my Twitter feed, their own original podcasts. And the one that we're promoting that I saw was the Story of the Clash. So from Spotify Studios, from original 8-part series podcast hosted by Public Enemy's Chuck D. It's audio storytelling in the best format. There's ambient sounds. There's music, of course. There's interviews with the players, and it goes from 1976 until for 8 parts. It's an 8-part series. I haven't listened to all of it yet, but it's a great podcast. But it is telling that Spotify is promoting a music-related podcast from its in-house studio. They have another one called Dissect, which takes an individual song and dissects it for the length of an episode. They've gone through entire albums, Kendrick Lamar. So that's another obvious music-related podcast. It seems that they are using their in-studio podcast to acclimate their users to podcasting by easing them in with music podcasts, right? Because Spotify is a music platform. But it'll be fascinating to see how that plays out. I have noticed our own podcasts don't get a lot of play on Spotify unless there's a music-related title in the episode, and then they get listened to. So our highest, most downloaded, most listened to podcasts on Spotify invariably have a music-related title to them. So it'll be interesting to see if they can overcome that user expectation hurdle. But they're certainly trying, because podcasts are all over it now.
That's very clever. Of them. So this week, Tesla had an epic Easter egg. people were hoping to get a sneak preview from the Model Y, which is an electric SUV, and it's going to be revealed on March 14th. And so they were inviting people to the debut, and they sent a teaser image to the people who were invited. And the car is like very much in the shadows. So YouTuber Marcus Brownlee, he tried to put the image through an image editor to see if he could uncover any details, and by brightening up the picture. And a guy named Brandon Harvard did the same. And the funny part is that Tesla was trolling them because the company anticipated that people would try to brighten the photograph. So hidden within the shadows is it says, "Nice try."
I love it. That's very clever. I love it when, I mean, thinking through all the ways that your customers or your fans or whatever are going to interact with your brand, and then taking advantage of that in a very clever way. Well, they're likely going to do this, so let's put that Easter egg in there for all those people who are going to check out the image. So very cool.
That's funny.
Yeah. This is a story I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, and finally found, well, I'm talking about this week. It's from Neiman Labs. Ricardo Bilton, who reports on BBC News Labs and BBC Visual Journalism team, have teamed together to develop a custom bot builder application so they can make it as easy as possible for reporters to build chat bots and insert them in their stories. So reporters, obviously, they're focused on gathering stories and reporting stories and writing their stories. They're not programmers. They don't have a lot of time. They're always stretched thin because they're working overtime most of the time. So how do we make it as easy as possible for reporters to use this tool? In a few minutes, then, with this tool, a BBC reporter can input the text of an article, define questions that users can click on, and then publish the bot. And it can be reused and added to other relevant articles, and can even repurpose they can even repurpose existing Q&A explainers into bot-based conversations. So it behaves, these chat bots behave very much like the instant answers in Google search results, where you'll get people also asked, and then you click on it and it has an answer and so forth. So it's very much like that format. An example they give is a story about a typo in the State of the Union tickets. Remember that story?
Yep.
So there's, in that article on the BBC site, there's a Catch Me Up module. The title says, Donald Trump came into office promising to change the face of American politics and transfer power back to the people. And then the chatbot offers 3 questions that you can click on. How are the president's approval ratings? How is the economy faring under President Trump? And has the president changed immigration numbers? You pick one, and the chat interface expands with the answers, one of which is he's one of the most unpopular presidents in the modern era. Probably say but quibbling. With each answer, one or more new questions pop up that have additional answers to them. So for the BBC, these bots are a way to reach and inform readers in a new way who are really not deeply engaged in complicated stories. One recent bot they created helps users understand how the sharp rise in personal lending might affect them. Another helps people catch up on what's going on in North Korea. Another helps people understand what the latest flu outbreak is about. They've found that every bot tends to attract a small but highly engaged subset of users who spend a lot of time interacting with the modules. So these bots are a way of using this type of a format in your articles, or one of engaging people deeper in the story, creating more time on page if you're selling advertising. And also just deeply engaging with a brand. They're also, I took a look at the code underneath, and it doesn't appear that they're optimizing it for audio optimization, but that seems like a very obvious next step to optimize these bots so that they can be found through like smart speakers when people are asking questions to smart speakers. So very interesting experiment.
Have you tried it yet?
I have.
Have you tried to make one?
Oh, no.
No, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
So this is a fun one. This week, there's a whole lot of the photography is wrapping up on episode 9, and the Mandalorian for the next Star Wars movies. And This week, a trailer that was made by fans took over social media. It's the entire series of live-action movies to date in 5 minutes. And it's had 1.5 million views and 36,000 likes since February 26th. It's it was done in part by Topher Grace, who is from That 70s Show, and he's a massive Star Wars fan. A few years ago, he re-edited the entire prequel trilogy into one 85-minute movie with the title Star Wars Episode 3.5, the editor strikes back. And it's clear that somebody at Lucasfilms needs to give this man a job, if only because it took him only 5 minutes to remind everybody why they actually love all these movies to begin with.
Oh, awesome.
It's great. It really is great. You got to watch it.
I like the little stick figure animations explaining movies in 5 minutes. Have you seen those?
Yeah, those are fun.
Very funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
those are actually more clear than this. It's kind of muddled, but it's funny.
So speaking of video, Buffer has come out with a square versus vertical video study where they examined both formats. And this is from Brian Peters at Buffer. The conclusion is, we'll link to it so you can get all the data and everything, but the conclusion is we're in the midst of a video revolution. The traditional 16:9 landscape format is being replaced by a new 9:16 vertical format that has fast become the default for video creation and consumption. And I disagree. I don't disagree that it's a popular format, that 9:16 is a popular format, but I think it depends entirely on the context of what the video is being consumed and what kind of video you're creating and everything. So I don't know that you can make that broad conclusion without stipulating that really it depends on what you're trying to do. I came across a reporter request for vertical video, the title of which was is vertical video the future of content marketing? I didn't respond to it, so I wanted to respond to it now. I kind of think it is, but I kind of think it's not just video. Video has been a huge format for the past several years, and it continues to be. But really, what is vertical video marketing? It's just designing video experiences that best take advantage of the 9:16 screen ratio, right? So if you're using stories, then you probably want the vertical video format. If you're doing how-to videos, you probably want the landscape format for YouTube, right? Why is vertical video marketing on the rise was another question. It's just because consumers are shooting more video in 9:16 ratio, right? It's easier to shoot video on an iPhone that way than it is to hold it with two hands in the landscape format. That's why it's becoming so popular. It's just people are shooting it. It's more comfortable to shoot that way. Snapchat recognized this and rose to prominence in the back of the 9:16 format. Meerkat and Periscope helped propel it further. Facebook stole Snapchat's idea for stories and integrated it into Facebook and Instagram stories. And then YouTube finally buckled and supported the format, even though a lot of their users probably aren't looking at 9:16 video. So what platforms are embracing this? All of them are. YouTube was the last one to do it, but their users are less likely to watch video that way anyway. And then finally, what types of campaigns can brands do well with vertical videos? It really kind of lends itself to ad hoc, first-person, intimate, authentic feel, as opposed to highly polished, highly produced videos. It's kind of, you think about how normal consumers are using it. They're using it to show off their day-to-day and things that they're interested in. It does have that first-person, authentic feel. So I think that's how brands can get the most out of it, is mimicking what consumers are already experiencing through that format.
So I took a class this week with Erin Brown, who's a very successful digital journalist who's been at the New York Times. She's now in Tunisia on assignment, and she said it was for Instagram stories, and she said, use the 9:16 format. And at the end of the show, I have some tools that I learned in this class that are really phenomenal. But one of the things that she said was that you don't want highly produced videos in that format. You want, the whole thing about stories is that they have to look personal and they have to look like they were, made in real time and not taken into a studio and all of that. So, but anyway, that is what's happening. And even when you get a holder for your phone, they're always done vertically. I have not seen one yet where you could put your phone horizontally in a holder that, comes with lights or whatever. So, I agree with you. It should be what you're trying to do that should dictate the format that you use.
Right.
So this is a wonderful story. This is about a school principal in Beaumont, Texas, whose name is Dr. Belinda George. And this is from a Washington Post story by Allison Klein. And Dr. George wants to promote a love of reading. And, elementary school educators tell their students to read a book at night, or have somebody read to them, but not all of them have someone to do that. So every Tuesday night, she snuggles up in her jammies and takes to Facebook Live and reads a story to her elementary school students. And anyone who goes to the school's Facebook page can watch it live, and she calls them Tucked In Tuesdays. And it's become somewhat of a sensation, not just at her school, but beyond. And she said kids come up on Wednesday and they say, Dr. George, I saw you in your PJs reading. And then they tell me the favorite part of the book. And she said she does it because she wants to keep the relationship between home and school strong, and also because she adores her students. And she said the bottom line is, I love kids, and she doesn't have any of her own. And she knows if she doesn't reach out to them outside of school, she's never going to reach them in school. And she really gets into the stories. When she read, the most recent one was the Ladybug Girl, and she was wearing a pair of enormous ladybug wings, and she was cuddled up with a big stuffed ladybug. And when she read Madeline's Christmas, she had on a Cookie Monster onesie with the hood up. And there was a big inflatable astronaut behind her this past Tuesday when she read the Astronaut Handbook. And she announces the reading grade level of each book. And then the next day, if they want to, the students can take an optional quiz as part of the reading comprehension curriculum. But she said 94% of her students come from economically disadvantaged homes, and that literacy tests last year showed an average of just 55% of her third and fourth and fifth graders were reading at or above grade level. And she said they've already seen growth since she's been doing this, and they've made big strides in literacy. So she's just really into her kids, because besides reading to them once a week, she has a twice a week dance party at school, and she goes on home visits to give students kudos to help them if they're off track. And she said, anything I can do to build relationships. If a child feels loved, then they'll try. And she said, there's no science about that. Now, I think back to my first grade teacher, my third and fourth grade and fifth grade teachers, they didn't do that.
Yeah, they didn't have Facebook Live, did they?
No, they didn't have Facebook Live, but they also didn't come over and visit you or, engage with you.
Did mine. That's a fascinating, cute and fascinating story. It also reminds me of many episodes ago, we discussed I think it was a social worker who was going around, who figured out that basically the more words that are said in the presence of a child as they're developing, the more likely they are to be able to read and be proficient at reading and having the reading comprehension skills later in life, simply because they've been exposed to a larger vocabulary. So this, I imagine, helps with that as well.
I just read something about that this week. I'll look for it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So AR. This is, we love augmented reality. We talk about it a lot, so let's talk about it some more. This is from a 9 to 5 Mac story by Benjamin Mayo, who talks about a report by Ming Chi Ku, who is an analyst at CGI Securities and has a reputation for predicting consumer electronics, fairly solid reputation for doing that. And he's making another prediction. And Apple's first AR product, he predicts, will go into mass production as soon as the fourth quarter of this year, or at the latest, the second quarter of 2020. So smart glasses from Apple. It says they'd be heavily dependent on the iPhone. The AR glasses, Apple's AR glasses, will essentially act as a display only. The actual computing, the rendering, the internet connectivity, location would be done on the iPhone, and it's assumed that the pairing would be wireless. Apple's basically they're creating a headset that the technology on the headset would really be just in the design of the display and companion depth sensors as well. So there's still technology to be built into the glasses, but it's all about design, right? So far, none of these smart glasses have really taken off. And if anybody can do it, Apple can do it because they design products extremely well. So we will see what happens, but this is pretty exciting if it does. I imagine they're going to be insanely expensive, as all Apple products are, but there you go.
And you'll need a newer iPhone to use them.
Yeah, and you'll need all kinds of $40 devices to make it work. You'll have to have AirPods. Yeah,
right, exactly. But but still, everybody's going to want them, and the price will eventually come down. I can usually wait for the second. I can always wait for the second or third iteration. So I don't have any more good news. I'm on to bad news. How about you?
I got more good news, and it's related to that last one. So this is a HoloLens, Microsoft's mixed reality product. This is from a CNET article by Scott Stein, who does an in-depth, hands-on article. So we'll link to it. It's really good if you want to know more about the HoloLens 2, which is obviously the second version of it. It is an industrial product. So rather than consumer audience, they're looking at the enterprise. It's $3,500. Some examples they give is fixing a motorcycle. So you put on the glasses and you're looking at a motorcycle and it points to the parts that you need to remove and does that type of application. They also, though, more excitingly, is have group collaboration. So they can, for an office who's creative space, they can collaborate on things and have a shared mixed reality space that's hosted in Microsoft's cloud, their Azure cloud. So anybody can join it and interact with it, and it's stored there. It has the lenses have eye tracking that serves a dual purpose. So it can measure your eye movements and use your eye movements to interact with virtual objects. So you can actually move things with your eyes, but also they act as biometric security too. So it has iris scanning that allows you to log in instantly to your Windows account and remember your personal headset preferences and so forth. So it's some pretty cool technology, but at $3,500, I'm not going to be buying one.
You know who's surprisingly advanced in that area is Epson, who most of us think of as a failed printer company. They're very heavily involved in the lenses and the technology that's part of augmented reality and virtual reality glasses and this type of technology for robotic factories and everything. I was really surprised when I learned that they are leaders in that because they're very behind the scenes with it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So does that bring us to bad news?
It does. Go ahead.
Rotten news here. We haven't been exactly major fans of influencers on this show, but the latest way that influencers are making money is with pharmaceutical endorsements. This is from a Vox story by Suzanne Zuppello. And so what's happening is that pharmaceutical companies are enlisting influencers to market healthcare products, and biotechnology companies are using them. And so basically what happens is you look at one of these influencers telling you that they are using, for example, one of the examples I'll have in the show notes is using a diabetes wearable device, and that one is very clearly labeled as a sponsored one, but in many of them they're not labeled. And so you look and you think, well, if I have this product or if I take this drug, I can be as healthy as this person who's talking about it. That's the goal of this type of advertising. And the problem here is that regulation is not exactly happening. The FDA and the FTC rely on consumers, you and me, to report non-compliant ads. So according to the FTC Advertising Practices Division, even though most consumers are not exactly experts in federal advertising guidelines, we're supposed to be able to go and tell them that we saw somebody not following the guidelines. So as regulatory agencies, they say they don't attempt to survey all influencers or their influencer posts, either alone or with the help of social media platforms, because in order to fully police and follow their guidelines, they'd have to comb millions of posts to determine which ones are paid ads and whether those ads are compliant. So while it's their responsibility to make sure healthcare companies comply with advertising regulations, social media has become an advertising black hole with limited tools where anybody can search or report non-compliant posts. So this is disturbing because there's no immediate consequence for omitting information required by the regulatory agencies. So while a drug company could be sued if incorrect or incomplete labeling on a drug or device causes you harm, an influencer is not likely to face the same legal repercussions. Although an influencer is, according to federal guidelines, an agent of the company, the FDA will appeal directly to the company and there won't be adverse consequences to the influencer. And those consequences would be at the discretion of the company and would depend on the contract. So for consumers to protect themselves in ways that regulatory agencies cannot or will not, we have to remember that influencing is a job. And it's one that you can only do effectively if the stories you tell are relatable to the average user. And, if you put a whole lot of advertising content in there, maybe that's not going to happen. So our clicks and likes and follows may or may not improve our lives in spite of what captions in Instagram stories might lead us to believe. But when we engage with these things, we definitely help the bottom line of the influencers. So these Instagram ads, influencers are paid an estimated 1,000 per 100,000 followers. And they're basically selling their lifestyle. So instead of buying a single page ad or a minute-long TV or a radio spot, companies feel like they benefit from the candor and the storytelling on influencer feeds. So one influencer who's compensated by a variety of brands outside of healthcare and who didn't want to be named, surprisingly enough, confirmed that some Instagrammers, to make their posts more authentic and sell a product, they bury the sponsored tag, which is supposed to be the hashtag sponsored, or they put that deep in the copy, or they shorten it to hashtag spawn, despite the FTC guidelines that they have to be clear and conspicuous. So, selling a pair of shoes or a suitcase as part of a lifestyle is a whole lot different from selling medical devices and other health-related products. And the pharmaceutical and biotech companies and Silicon Valley health startups see the opportunity that Instagram presents, and this trend is increasing as a way of increasing the bottom line. So consumer beware, as usual.
Yeah, I think, the onus needs to be placed more on the company than the influencers.
Well, it has to be placed on somebody. That's the point, and since nobody's really policing it, nobody's really doing that.
Yeah. Well, so this is a trolling tactic that I had actually encountered before and didn't realize it was a trolling tactic until I came across this article by Marshall Shepard at Forbes, who talks about sealioning. That's the phrase, sealioning.
Sealions.
Well, you want to name more. The article cites a Dr. Peter Akers, who explains what it is. He's a scientist at Geosciences d'Environnement at Grenoble, who says, he's quoted as saying, people who troll online by pretending to ask sincere questions, but just keep feigning ignorance and repeating polite follow-ups until someone gets fed up. That way they can cast their opponent as attacking them and being unreasonable. It's pretty common on comment sections of weather blogs regarding climate change. It's called sealioning, and there's a term, and the term is based on this lovely comic, which we'll link to in the show notes, which is a comic with a sea lion in it, demonstrating that behavior. There's also a dictionary of social media by Daniel Chandler and Rod Monday, who define sea lioning as a disparaging term for the confrontational practice of leaping into an online discussion with endless demands for answers and evidence. So Marshall, the author of the article, is a climate scientist, and so he's encountered plenty of climate change deniers online and their trolling tactics. He lists them: the use of misinterpreted or outdated science information, citation of one study that confirms a bias, establishing tangential or inflated credentials, the grand poobah effect, quote unquote, of repeating a favorite personality, referencing natural cycles, ice ages, or magazine articles, or deflection with a series of irrelevant questions create a gotcha moment for the scientists, which is what sea lioning amounts to. Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard University published a collection of essays, of which one was Perspectives on Harmful Speech Online by Amy Johnson, who writes, rhetorically, sea lioning fuses persistent questioning, often about basic information easily found elsewhere or unrelated or tangential points, with a loudly insistent upon commitment to reasonable debate. It distinguishes itself as a sincere attempt to learn and communicate. Sea lioning thus works both to exhaust the target's patient, attention, and communicative effort, and to portray the target as unreasonable. While the questions of the sea lion may seem innocent, they're intended maliciously and have harmful consequences. Johnson suggests describing the tactic rather than sea lying, which doesn't really explain anything until you explain what sea lying is, as a type of denial of service attack aimed at humans rather than servers. So perfect description of what that is. But yeah, I've come across this and didn't even realize until I read this article what that actually was.
I've seen this myself, but I don't know why you have to pick on sea lions, really. Anyway, this is basically related. This is from there has been a toilet paper controversy, and this is just really dirty marketing. And the backstory is that Walmart created a social media spot that had two gay men going on a blind date at Walmart. God only knows why. And Cottonelle produced a tongue-in-cheek video about a gay man feeling more confident about meeting his boyfriend's parents after using their toilet paper. So conservatives called foul, and what happened was that the conservatives were being used by marketers and their PR teams because it looked like the marketers of Walmart and Cottonelle were both counting on the social conservatives' outrage to drive their business objectives. That's what Curtis Sparrow, who's from Bospar PR, said. Neither video was a traditional broadcast segment. It was produced for social media. So conservatives didn't just stumble across these, they were alerted to them, likely by the companies themselves. Now, the method behind this madness is that marketers count on public reaction to their campaigns. So they know that conservatives can be reliably counted on to provide an immediate reaction to any pro-LGBT storyline, and that creates a controversy that might be newsworthy for a journalist to cover. So the media coverage is going to feature both sides of the controversy, but it's also going to provide top-of-mind brand recognition that research finds is more effective than traditional advertising because it's earned media. And that means that social conservatives, and I find this a bit amusing, have become useful tools for marketers and PR. And Sparrow, who's gay, says he's loath to reveal this tactic because social conservatives might get wise to it and not take the bait the next time for a campaign that features LGBT people. He said, "I'm eager for the day when LGBT people can be featured in media and people will simply react to the spot on the merits of its content and not its controversy." But, that's dirty marketing.
Interesting. Triggering the outrage industry to
and that's not the only time it's happened. That's just, a very flagrant example. But I mean, do you remember early in the days, I remember this well, early in the blogging days, I'm trying to remember his name because he was so despicable. There was a guy who wrote for Ad Age at the time, and he wrote an article about how stupid blogging was and why are people wasting their time doing that. And everybody like just jumped on him, and everybody wrote about him. This was pre-social media, and everybody blogged about him, and everybody talked about him. And later that day, he announced his own blog.
Yeah, that's that was, I think, who was
What
that?
was his name? That prick.
Was it not Gary Vaynerchuk? It was
No.
he's a PR guy. He's still around.
Well, he was an Ad Age writer at that time.
Yeah, well, that's a common tactic.
I
mean,
know, but it's
it's the SEO is dead headline that I always react to, even though I know what they're doing.
Right, exactly, and that's what this is, but in a much bigger way, you know.
Yeah. So this is an interesting article, a Vox article by Samuel about racist self-driving cars. So if you are a person with dark skin, you may be more likely than us white folks to get hit by a self-driving car, according to a new study out of the Georgia Institute of Technology. That's because these automated vehicles are better at detecting lighter skin tones. The report is called Predictive Inequity in Object Detection. The premise is how accurately do state-of-the-art object detection models, like those used by self-driving cars, detect people from different demographic groups. So the researchers tried to find that out. They looked at a large data set of images that contained pedestrians, and they divided them up into people using the Fitzpatrick scale, which is a system for classifying human skin tones. They analyzed how often the models correctly detected the presence of people in light skin groups versus those in dark skin groups. And the detection was 5 percentage points less accurate for the dark skin groups. The disparity persisted even when controlled for variables like time of day and occasionally obstructed view of pedestrians. The research hasn't yet been peer reviewed. They didn't test any object detection models that actually were being used by self-driving cars. It didn't leverage any training data sets that are being used by autonomous vehicle manufacturers. Instead, tested several models used by academic researchers. They were trained on publicly available data sets. They had to do it that way because companies don't make this data available, right? So it is a serious issue because it's a matter of obvious public concern. Kate Crawford, who's a co-director of the AI Now Research Institute, not involved in the study, said on Twitter about their study, in an ideal world, academics would be testing the actual models and training sets used by autonomous car manufacturers, but given those are never made available, a problem in itself, papers like these offer strong insights into the very real risks. So the authors note that a couple of factors are likely fueling the disparity. First, the object detection models have been mostly trained on examples using light-skinned pedestrians. It is, again, the thing that we talk about all the time in terms of algorithms. The data set determines the outcome, so you need to be careful about what data sets you're using. And second, the models didn't place enough weight on the few examples of dark-skinned people that they did have. So one potential solution, one that we've talked about in many episodes, is more diverse development teams. But another is to mandate that companies test their algorithms for bias and demonstrate that they meet certain fairness standards, which is the one that I think we should prefer, because you just can't depend on them to do it. And it's a huge, these algorithms are a huge and growing part of our existence in society. So we need to make sure that they're fair.
What was the most recent one we talked about? I'm trying to think about that. And not detecting dark-skinned people. Was it job related or? I can't remember, but we did one. Yeah, we did one recently. So that brings us to shiny objects, yeah?
No, it doesn't. I have one more worse one. This is one I came across in my inbox, an email that had the from field that said linked into jobs. So naturally, I thought it was from LinkedIn. So I clicked on it and looked at it, and the actual email was from some other company, not LinkedIn. They were using the from field deceptively to make it look as if it was coming from LinkedIn. with the from field called linked into jobs. So if you just glance at it, you think it's from LinkedIn, and it's a trusted source. So you're going to open it, and then you find out that no, it's from another company. So completely deceptive use of the from field. For email marketers out there, don't do this. You're just going to engender ill will towards your brand. So now
it's
we're
not an uncommon tactic either, unfortunately. So I took this wonderful course this week from Erin Brown about how to improve and make your Instagram stories, and she gave us some tools, and one of them is called VCSO, and you get it in the Apple store or the Android store, and it's just a really great tool for upping your skills on Instagram. It's got a free and a paid version, but you can do basic editing like contrast, saturation, and grain. But what's cool about it is it has a whole library of photos and editorial content that you can add to your story to help explain it. And you can also share your photos to be curated into that library. So I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's a very cool app. And you have one, Dave?
I use that app. I like that app.
Isn't that a great app?
It is. Mine is a podcast. So this is from, I found this through social media today. Andrew Hutchinson wrote about it from LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has launched a new podcast called Hello Monday, which showcases stories of professional development. It's hosted by LinkedIn's senior editor at large, Jesse Hempel. Each episode features an interview with somebody who's found success in their field. It's supplemented with data from the network, from LinkedIn's over 600 million members, and reporting from the community from managing news editor Caroline Fairchild. The first episode is really good. It was an interview with late night host Seth Meyers, who discussed how to lead a workforce when many of your employees have side gigs. So you imagine they've got a lot of comedy writers on staff at late night, and how to keep those people happy and creating great work while many of them have side projects. So he talked about, we'll even, if they've got a TV idea, we'll throw around ideas and help them improve it. We'll go in on pitches with them to television producers and help them find something. So it's a pretty interesting interview. I look forward to future episodes.
How long was the podcast?
I think it was about a half hour.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Yeah. So the other video editing tool that one of the others, there were several, is called Video Shop. And it's a really easy, fast editing tool. It has filters and a lot of effects. So this one's for iPad and iPhone only, but just a couple of the things you can do. You can trim your video. You can cut out any unwanted moments. You can split your video into multiple clips. You can add music from your iPad library or your phone. You can buy clips from the video mall. You can add sound effects. They have animal noises, they have farts, they have Vine quotes, they have laughter. You can have slow motion or fast motion. You can adjust the speed. You can adjust the display. You can change the saturation, the contrast, the brightness. You can merge several video clips into one, several photographs into a series. You can type your own text. This was like really the best thing about it, with color and various fonts. You can record your voice over the video. You can have animated titles that go as part of your videos. There are all kinds of filters and transitions between clips, and there are dozens more tools. But they warn you, adding an enormous amount of content effects may overwork your phone's processing power. So don't get carried away.
That sounds like it needs to do some more work on the app, if that's the case.
Well, I don't know about that. It's a pretty wonderful app, and you can do amazing things with it on your phone. You just have to realize that you're not you're not Cecil B. DeMille, So, do you have another one, Dave?
I don't.
So, the other one I came across was Ochman. I can't pronounce it. But the World Wide Web Consortium this week approved Web AUTHN, Authn, and it's a new authentication standard for password-free logins. And so it's an API that lets websites communicate with security devices and lets you log into your online accounts using biometrics and authorization hardware, which is definitely the coming thing, like FIDO security keys. And it's already supported by Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Safari. Android and Windows 10 also support this new standard. So the next step is for websites to integrate the standard, and Dropbox, Facebook, GitHub, Salesforce, Stripe, and Twitter are already on board. And this is important because 3 out of 4 of us duplicate passwords online, and 21% of people use passwords that are over 10 years old. So this is the coming thing. We won't have to have all these damn passwords. You have a key. It'll be a physical thing.
That would be fantastic.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so done with passwords. I don't have another one, but I do have a political one. This is from The Verge. Makina Kelly writes about an American Workforce Policy Advisory Board meeting that Tim Cook of Apple attended, where Trump flubbed out Tim Cook's name, and instead of calling him by his, without being bothered to learn his real name, called him Tim Apple. So Twitter responded, as did Tim Cook, who changed his last name on his Twitter bio to the Apple character. But the Apple character isn't a Unicode symbol, so it's only visible on Apple's operating system. If you're viewing from an Android or a Windows device, you'll just see a blacked out square. But nice troll, Tim.
Well, honestly, I think that he's done this before. Who did he call? He called somebody else by their company name. I think, how you used to study by associations? I think that's how he tries to remember things. And then he can't remember the real thing. Like when I took French, I could only remember in my final exam, instead of remembering what I was supposed to, I remembered my, whatever that's called, where you make a sentence. And I remembered Victor Hugo crapped on Notre Dame, which was something that was not the answer. And I think that's part of how he memorized this thing.
Now I'm not going to be able to get that image out of my head.
But I think he knew that was his name. I really do. But anyway.
So pro tips. I've got a pro tip. This is from a pro tip I actually gave to for an article on Fit Small Business by Anna Dizan about public speaking tips. So the article is top 25 public speaking tips. Mine was, I've done this before, so this is from experience. If you draw a blank in the middle of your presentation. Oh, no!
Who hasn't done that?
It tends to induce panic, right? So the thing is, don't panic. Because you're just going to feel it. It's going to take longer and longer. You're going to panic more and more and more. You'll feel the silence stretch out. You'll feel the eyes of the audience upon you as you're struggling to remember what you're supposed to say. So just don't panic. Take a breath. Steady yourself. Look at your notes. That presumes you have notes, which you should have notes just in case this happens. Look at your notes and get your bearing. Your memory will be jogged and it'll be fine. It's not the end of the world. If it takes too long, you might want to make a joke at your expense. I totally blanked out. People are sympathetic. Most people are terrified of public speaking, so they're already sympathetic to you. But yeah, it's not the end of the world. Take a breath. Don't panic. Get your bearings and you'll be fine.
That's really good advice. I mean, I also think, like, at the beginning when your knees are shaking and your voice is shaking, if you say to people, I'm a little nervous, people feel for you. And people know how hard this is. That's good advice, Dave.
Yeah. So let's wrap this up. Speaking of smart glasses, I've got some smart glasses numbers here. Smart glasses shipments. So in 2017, according to ABI research, in 2017, smart glasses devices shipped worldwide was at 0.23 million in 2017. By 2022, those shipments are expected to reach 32.7 million devices. So it looks like the smart devices are, the technology is coming around, as we said, with the Apple getting into the game and Hololens kind of perfecting it. Augmented reality is going to lead the way. Virtual reality is still is going to take some time to get there, but I think we're getting closer.
I definitely think we're getting closer, and as soon as they get down to $250, I'm going to buy a pair.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that's what's stopping people. I mean, you know, the thing is that we're so early in the technology, and that we're you know, they're expensive,
Yep.
and you buy something expensive, and then it's replaced. So that brings us to the end of episode 262 of the Beyond Social Media Show. If you want to find us, just search Beyond Social Media Show, and you can find links to everything that we discussed in this and every other episode on our blog, beyondsocialmediashow.com. We hope you'll let us know what you think by leaving us a review. You can do that at beyondsocialmediashow.com/love. But where we'd really love you to leave a review is on iTunes. That would be just so appreciated. So my charming co-host here is David Erickson. He is on Twitter as D. Erickson, on Instagram as D.E. Erickson. He blogs at eStrategyBlog.com, which he always fills with wonderful content. I highly recommend subscribing to it. I'm BL Ochman. On Twitter, I am at What's Next. I blog at what'snextblog.com. I'm on YouTube as What's Next Blog. My site is blochman.com. And the show, beyondsocialmediashow.com. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter as BS Media Show. You'll find us on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And you can just ask your Google Home device to play Beyond Social Media Show, and she'll do it. Right, Dave?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be back next week, and we thank you for watching this week.
Thanks for watching.